This story is the reason why I'll never live alone. Once there was an elderly woman who lived alone in a cabin in the mountains. She lived a quiet life and rarely had visitors. Her husband had passed away recently, so her only companion was her beloved dog. Every night when the woman went to bed, the dog would lick her hand as a way to let her know that he was always there to protect her. But one night the woman was woken up to the sound of her dog whimpering. So she reached her hand below her bed and the dog licked her hand as always. She thought the dog must just be cold, so she didn't think that much of it. In the morning, she stuck her hand out again, but the dog wasn't there anymore. She thought he must be up already and was just wandering around the house. But what she'd find later would terrify her. She heard dripping noises, so she went to the bathroom to see if it was a sink, but it wasn't. Instead, she saw her loving companion hung up by the bathtub, and on the bathroom mirror were the words written in blood, "Humans can lick too." Has anyone ever told you not to do something and that just made you want to do it more? Once, 3 girls went into a video rental store to find a horror movie to watch. They came across an old tape, but the woman at the store told them they weren't allowed to watch it. After one girl stole the tape, they decided to watch it together. But what they would see would terrify them. They pressed play. Suddenly, the room went into darkness, with only the TV on. On screen, they saw a woman tied to a wooden stake. She was surrounded by an angry crowd carrying torches, until one man walked towards the woman and set the wood beneath her feet on fire. The woman began laughing, and as the flames reached her face, she screamed that all who witnessed her death would suffer the same fate in 2 days. Then the tape cut off. The girls were scared, but eventually convinced themselves it was a prank. They decided to return the tape, but when they went back to the store, they found that it was gone. It was just an abandoned building. 2 days later, all 3 girls were found scattered across the city, their bodies burned beyond recognition. When the police investigated the strange coincidence, they found nothing around the girls had been touched by flames at all, except the trash can outside of one of their homes. Everything inside had been turned to ash, except for one mysterious videotape, which was left untouched. Story of the woman who turned people into soap. Leonarda Cianciulli was the type of mom that played favorites. So when her favorite son Giuseppe was about to sign up for the Italian army, she figured the only way to protect him was through human sacrifice. This is where Virginia comes in. Leonarda lured Virginia into her house by saying that she found her a job in Florence. And as soon as Virginia arrived, Leonarda got to work. Back to the store in 1 second, but I just launched my online store. So you can now get my art as pins, stickers, shirts, etc. I worked really hard on this store, so I hope you like it. Link in bio. Okay, back to Virginia. Leonarda attacked her with an axe and then put the pieces into a pot. And this is a direct quote from her diary. When it melted, I added a bottle of cologne, and after a long time on the boil, I was able to make some most acceptable creamy soap. And then she gave the soap to her friends and her neighbors. She even said that the texture was like thick, dark mush. And believe it or not, this is not even the most disturbing part of the story. Before all of this happened, she had also turned a bunch of people into tea cakes. I'll explain that in part 2. If someone asked to put makeup on you, don't do what she did. One night a girl in Japan was walking home at night when she came across an elderly woman. It seemed like the woman was walking around aimlessly. She was wearing an oversized hat and had a cane. While she had wrinkles on her face, she also wore quite a bit of makeup. The young girl didn't think much of it until the old woman came up to her and asked if she wanted to try some of her makeup powder. She said that she loved using it and it would make the young girl so much more beautiful. She didn't want to be rude, so she agreed. What could be the harm? But she could have never imagined the horrifying consequences this could possibly lead to. The moment the white powder was applied to her face, she felt a deep burning sensation. Then she felt the flesh on her face fall off. The old woman was the face powder hag, a creature from Japanese urban legend who tricks young girls into putting on her makeup. When the young girls' faces begin to rot and fall off until there's nothing left but a skull, she will steal their flesh for herself. What she does with it is still a mystery. This man's wife left him, but not for the reasons he thought. Once there was a couple who just got married in Paris. They were very happy together, but the wife had one secret she didn't tell her husband yet. She had a birthmark on her face. She'd been wearing makeup to cover it, but she thought once she showed her husband, she would know whether he truly loved her. So after they got married, she took off her makeup and showed him. He was surprised, but he wasn't going to let that change anything. However, the next morning, his wife was gone. Her husband thought that she must have felt upset due to how surprised he looked when he saw her birthmark. Or maybe she had second thoughts. After months of getting no reply, he finally gave up on trying to look for her. He was heartbroken, but after a few years, he got a new job in a different city. He wanted a fresh start in life, but things didn't go as planned. He came across a strange-looking circus called the House of Oddities. This made him very curious, so he went in, but what he saw inside would shock him. Among the other circus acts, he saw a twisted woman rocking back and forth, looking terrified. He screamed as he recognized the birthmark on her face. This is how, for a group of college students, the game Among Us turned deadly. One night, Blair was playing with his friends through video call, Brayden, Allie, Jenny, and David. His screen flashed, "Crewmate, there is one imposter among us." A few seconds later, they all heard Allie gasp through their video call and say, "No, no, get away from me." But her character was still standing there, not dead, as if she was just away from the keyboard. After a while of not responding, Jenny goes to check on her. But as Jenny walked into her room, she found Allie on the ground, surrounded by a pool of blood. Then her computer screen flashes. "Dead body reported." At this time, Blair picks up the phone to call the police, but when he hears footsteps coming closer to his room, he opens the door to find Brayden in the common room holding a knife in one hand and a computer in the other. Blair shuts the door, opens the window to try to climb out, but he catches a glimpse on his computer screen one last time. "Dead body reported," with an image of his character. Do you know the story behind your zodiac sign? Today we're going to talk about the origin story of Leo, which begins when Hera decided to be a little bit toxic to her husband Zeus by sending a powerful mystical lion to live in a cave in Nemea, which is where Zeus's shrine was. So anyone who wanted to worship Zeus would have to get through this ferocious lion. After that, Hercules was actually tasked to defeat the lion and take its pelt to King Eurystheus. But of course this was no regular lion, because it was the son of the fire-breathing monster Typhon, and it was more than twice the size of a normal lion, and most importantly, its skin was indestructible. So Hercules goes into the cave and blocks off an entrance, but he soon realized something was wrong. He couldn't actually take the pelt off because the lion's skin was indestructible, so any tools that he brought was useless. So he had to use the lion's own paw. Eventually he succeeds, brings the pelt back to the king, but then decides it would be better to keep it as his own armor. Afterwards, either Zeus or Hera immortalized the ferocious lion in the sky as the constellation of Leo. But which zodiac sign should I talk about next? Follow to see the rest of the series. Do you know the story behind your zodiac sign? This story is probably one of the most interesting zodiac sign stories. This is the origin story of Cancer. So we all know Poseidon is the god of the sea, but he was actually forced into hiding after he was attacked by the vicious monster Typhon. So we left a giant crab named Krios in charge of protecting the sea nymphs that lived in his underwater kingdom. But after a while, the sea nymphs grew impatient and they wandered off into the open sea. So Krios asked a giant squid Vamari for help. However, things didn't go as planned. Krios didn't know that Vamari was a vampire squid who swam out, found the sea nymphs that wandered off, and ate them. After Krios did find out, there was a huge battle between him and Vamari. And even though Krios won, he sustained severe injuries. Krios wanted to be laid to rest, but he couldn't because he was an immortal crab. So when Poseidon returned, he honored Krios' bravery and relieved his pain by placing him in the sky as the constellation of Cancer. But which zodiac sign should I talk about next? Follow to see the rest of the series. Ghost stories from around the world. Venezuela, La Sayona. Once there was a young woman living in a small town in Venezuela. She was happily married to her husband and they had a baby boy together. One day she was swimming in the nearby river when she found a man staring at her from afar. From then on, she would find that same man staring at her every time she bathed in the river. Until one day, she finally confronted him. And he said he was there to warn her because her husband was having an affair with her mother. Outraged, the woman runs home and finds her husband and her son asleep. She sets the house on fire with both of them inside and then runs to her mother's house. She then attacks her mother with the machete, and as her mother took her last breath, she cursed her, saying that she would have to avenge all women by killing their unfaithful husbands. And that's how she became the restless spirit of La Sayona. She would lure men who would be willing to be unfaithful to their partners, rip off their parts, and then eat them.